Hi and welcome. Today we're going to dive right in and I am going to share some writing process ideas with you. I don't necessarily like to call them tips because I'm really hopeful that you will follow your own intuitive guidance and decide what type of process works for you. Or if you're struggling with all the information out there about what you should do and you feel you have a process, I really hope that this video gives you the confidence to stay your course and continue doing what you're doing. I'm also going to share a little bit about mentorship and how important it is, and also share a little bit about my writing journey and how I got started as a freelance writer, which I never had envisioned, and writing in general, I hadn't envisioned, to hopefully inspire, motivate, and maybe share an actionable tip for you. So if you're looking to get started on your writing journey, maybe there's some aspect of my story that is relatable and you can find some way to get started yourself or grow what you're already working on. So, welcome to Own Your Greatness. I'm your host, Melinda Van Fleet. I'm an intuitive and energetic business and leadership mentor. I also own a business with my husband, and this is a solo podcast this week. The last podcast was with my amazing niece, Sienna Krieg, and we talked about show, not tell. And in general, too, talked about this book, Circe by Madeline Miller, which I actually finished over the weekend, which I'm super excited because I haven't finished a fiction book in a long time, but this book is amazing. So if you haven't watched that episode yet, please go back and watch that episode because at the end of the episode, I talked about taking action and not over consuming, which is a very bad habit that a lot of people get into. So, yes, today I have my coach and mentor hat on for all of you. And I want to pick up where I left off with that nugget at the end of that episode. So when I first started as a freelance writer, again, I never thought that that would happen. Like it wasn't on my bucket list. It wasn't on my goal list. I had being a speaker as a goal. I had being a coach in terms of someday when we get our shit together, we will help others, which is part of my husband and I's story stemming back to 2009. So if you haven't read my website, it's all listed there. You can go back and read that if you feel like it. Fill your boots. There's lots of great content on my website, melindavanfleet.com. But I hadn't really thought about writing. And writing was always coming up in my mentor readings when I would have a spiritual guidance reading with a mentor, with a psychic, with a medium, whomever. It was always talking about writing. And I really still didn't even connect with that. It didn't really resonate. It didn't land. And what ended up happening was in 2019, when I launched my coaching business, I launched it with an event in April at a beautiful piece of property down here in the Keys. And it was suggested to me to have an event. It was suggested to hold it at this property. The event was an amazing learning experience on so many levels. And I wrote about that in Life and Love Lessons, which is my second book, which is available on Amazon. So if you wish to read it, go ahead and read that story. But what ended up happening after that was some people associated with the property had suggested, well, why don't you still like find a way to use the property? And the property is the Village Trading Post down in Islamorada. You may be familiar with it if you're in the Keys, and everybody watching, if you visit someday, please go there. It's amazing. So I thought to have a meetup. And if you know anything about meetup.com, you will know what I'm talking about. So meetup.com is a global website. It's been around for a very long time. And you can post different events that you are having, whether they're free or a fee, and you can market them, really market them. So I created a meetup that was free, a monthly meetup. It started in November 2019, and it was called Share the Good Vibes. And I love hosting workshops. Like, I love interacting with people. I love the conversation. I love the aha moments that come from things. I'm really, really great at structuring meetings and workshops based on what a team needs or a group of people. I've had my own group things over the years on and off. And so this idea came to me to have a meetup called Share the Good Vibes. And so again, I started in November 2019, and I did it for 5 months, November, December, January, February, March. And on average, I had between, let's say, 6 people to 12 people come, which actually for the Florida Keys is very good. So I was really happy. I was proud of that. And overall, we just had fun. Like the people that were there were meant to be there. I'm still connected to a lot of those people. I'm very grateful to those people. And, you always say you find the right people, people that land on these videos, you're meant to be here for a reason. I do believe that. I do believe there's no coincidences in terms of who you connect with, what content you consume, or who you hire as a coach or a mentor. So, anywho, so as you can guess, I had to stop the meetup because of COVID. But prior to that, one of the little shops that is in the village square called Miss Monroe, which is a really cool gift shop, and she has a lot of awesome clothes. And she had suggested to me to contact the editor of the Upper Keys Weekly to see if they could get an article about my meetup in the paper. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for the suggestion. So I did. I took action and I emailed the editor, who's still the editor to this day, Jim. He's a great guy. And I said, would someone be open to interviewing me and what I'm doing monthly for the paper? He said, sure. He sent down a freelance writer. Her name was Tiffany. She came to the event and then we met after and she did a full interview on the meetups and on me, which you can find on my website. So what ended up happening, which is so magical, is as she was wrapping up interviewing me, it came to me, I followed an intuitive nudge to ask her, again, I had no desire really to be a writer, to see if I could also be a writer for the paper. Like, whoop, out of my mouth. What do you think? Do you think I can be a writer for the paper? And Tiffany, in all her like amazingness, was like, well, I don't see why not. Why don't you just ask the editor? So I already had Jim's email and I asked him. We met for coffee and he said yes. So I actually started writing for the paper as a freelance in February 2020, right before COVID. And it started as a confidence, a motivational, inspirational article. And it was supposed to be once a week. But then when COVID came, they had to downsize the paper between the keys. There were 3 papers and they made it just one. So he then had to share with me that I could only have like a monthly column, which was fine. I was still over the moon excited to be published online, published in print, and also get paid for starting to write. And yeah, all those articles are out there online. They're all on my website. You can go to melindavanfleet.com, click on media, and like everything's there. So it was the beginning of my writing journey. So I often hear from a lot of hopeful writers, people that wish to write, well, how do I get started? Honestly, just look around. Look around. Ask the universe. Wait. See. Take action on a breadcrumb. There's so many different like ways you can work the formula in terms of asking the universe. And again, for me, I just followed breadcrumbs. When someone made a suggestion to do something, they made a suggestion to have the event. His name is Richmond, if he happens to be watching. Sometimes I know he listens to my podcast over the years. Like he started the ball. He said, why don't you have an event? Cool. Then it was, why don't you use the property more? And I think that came from a couple different sources. I said, yes, I did the meetups. Then Liz from Miss Monroe said, why don't you see if you can get an article in the paper? And I was like, sure, why not? I took action. I emailed the editor. And then I'm sitting there and divine guidance comes through and says, why don't you ask if you can be a writer too? And I asked, and he said yes. So I highly encourage you to do this work. And how do you start to do this work is you work on less distractions. You work on consuming less and you work on just really figuring out what lights you up in conjunction with your purpose, which is really about what brings you joy. And I think that's really important to hang on to. So, in that, I'm going to segue into process. So, when I started, again, I started as someone who was doing inspirational, motivational, similar to my book in a way, in terms of that they were in the nonfiction, spiritual little bits, the paper, so it wasn't like really spiritual, but more like in that vibe. And then my books are definitely more in the spiritual lane. So in August of 2021, the editor and I had coffee again, and he said, "How would you like to transfer from being a columnist about personal development to doing interviews with the local community?" And being that I was a sales rep for a super long time, I was in a women's networking group. I knew a lot of people were business owners down here, so I know a lot of people in the community. I jumped at that. I thought that was an amazing opportunity to be able to showcase and highlight other businesses down here, whether they're a new business or they just had a remodel or an anniversary or there's something else changing in their business that kind of created the pitch for the article that he gave me that opportunity, and I loved it. I love meeting new people, and it's really been my way to get out there and network in the community, and also my way to give, because then obviously those articles really help generate business for the business or the person. And it's free advertising, really. It's the best free advertising you can get down here. It's really amazing. Lots of people read the paper and it's online. So the search is incredible. So when I started, I really didn't know what I was doing, to be honest with you, but I followed my intuition. And my intuition said to bring my phone and just hit record because I'm very curious by nature. I ask a lot of questions and I'm a really good listener. So I knew that about myself. And so I knew that if I just hit record and I could just have conversations with people, heck, I've been in sales my pretty much my entire career. I love having conversations with people. I'm a coach, I'm a good listener. So all of those aspects really led me to my process, which is, again, I just bring my phone, I hit record, and we have a conversation. And then after that, normally on a Sunday, it's my writing day. And I sit and I listen to the conversation. I type as I'm listening. I just type what they are saying. And magically, it just puts itself together because it's a hodgepodge when it comes out of the recording. And I can't do voice to text. It looks like a disaster. If you've ever tried to transcribe a podcast, it's like a hot mess. It's easier just to listen and type. Let me tell you, tried that before. And so I just kind of created my own process. And I have stuck to that process all of this time. And what was really fascinating was some other freelance writers and myself, we used to get together once in a while and have breakfast. And they were sharing their processes. One of the writers' process was to create a Google Doc survey with questions and just send it to the person that they wish to interview. The person answers the questions, sends it back, and then they kind of create a story from that. Another process is that writer would sit and have the conversation and type at the computer. And then when they felt complete, they just felt complete. They had everything, and then they could kind of mix master it from there. And both of those processes are great, great examples too, but they weren't for me. So I would think about them because their whole thing with me was, oh gosh, that must take a lot of time. But I'm the master at time. I don't believe in time management. I believe in mastering time. And I'm really, really good at it. And I help my clients do that too. So why would I get caught up in some time management type process that didn't feel good for me? Right? Again, nothing wrong with the process. It's a great suggestion. And you may like that suggestion and wish to do that. Please have at it. It's awesome. That's why I'm sharing it. But for me, my process works for me. I know exactly how to do it. I love it. I love how I just listen and I ask questions. And then when I feel complete, I'm good. We go and part ways. And then I sit and type it. And sometimes I might have a follow-up question, but for the most part, it's pretty clean. It's sometimes like a little detail I need to complete the story. But that's my process. So my process works for me. Their processes work for them. And we're all happy and we're all successful writers. So having someone as a mentor where you can kind of bounce these things off of and have these conversations for me at that time starting out was really, really important because again, I didn't have a background as a freelance writer. I didn't even think I would ever be a freelance writer. It was the furthest thing from my head. And I certainly didn't know what I was doing. But having some fellow freelance writers to talk to was kind of like having a little bit of a mentorship. I didn't need a lot of mentorship to get this going because I was already so far in my journey. But at that time, I at least needed some help just to get out of my head on a couple other things outside of the process piece. And then the process piece was interesting for me to hear what some other potential ideas could be. And then I still stuck with my intuition and how I felt energetically in terms of how I conducted the interviews and the information I would get out of the conversations and stuck with my own process. So having a mentor to get out of your head and also help you clear blocks and distractions and other things that may be going on in your life that just really aren't meant for you is really, really helpful and important if you are feeling stuck. And that's how I help other people. I help people with whatever their purpose is, what lights them up, or helps you find that and stick to it and work through all the things holistically, including taking action and having a strategy that works for you so you can actually do the thing and be successful and move forward in your life and business. So I hope you got a lot out of this video. As always, I packed them in with lots of tips, ideas, and stories. And I love doing them and I love talking about writing. I'm having a super fun time on my personal journey. And I'm having fun recording my podcast again with my niece Sienna. So if you haven't listened to the one that has Fourth Wing in the title, go back and listen to that one, and you'll kind of hear a little bit about how we used to podcast together in 2021 and 2022. And we had taken a little break, and now we're back every other week. So she will be back next week, and we are both reading this book, which is huge, a huge, huge, huge popular book, a popular author, Sarah J. Maas, and one of her very popular series. So stay with me and stay with this series and let me know what you think. And if you're interested in working together, check out my website, melindavanfleet.com. The Work Together page has all sorts of different options from single sessions to yearly packages where you can get the most impact and transformation. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good one. Bye.